Hello, welcome to another video. Now, this is the networking part 4 video, and I'm pointing at this piece of metal because if you've watched the previous parts of this series, you will know that if I look over here, you can see I've got my rack and it has no back on it, the rack, and the reason you can just about see all the way through if I sort of hold the camera down like that. And the reason that I've got a rack and it has no back is because when it arrived, this here is supposed to have some blanking plates at the very top and at the very bottom in order for me to feed cables through. And for some reason this didn't go through the machine properly, and that's why it's just a solid piece of metal. Everything else about it is okay. It's got the acoustic foam in, which is one of the features of this particular cabinet, to keep it quiet. Which you can might be able to see on the side inside there, and on the bottom and on the top. But yes, without the blanking plates, you've got no chance of feeding the cables through. So I brought it up with the manufacturers, and they said, don't worry, we will send you a replacement. Now it's taken about 6 weeks to get here because they didn't have one in stock, and they had to wait till they had some stock. And today FedEx dropped off this parcel. Here it is. So inside there, I'm hoping, is a version of that, but with the blanking plates that are supposed to be there. So the next thing I'm going to do is find a pair of scissors, and I'm going to open this up and see what's inside. So because I don't really want to do this one-handed, I will pause the camera momentarily and show you what's inside in just a moment. Right, I have opened the box, and the good sign is that this has the acoustic foam in it, so that's a good start. So let's lift this up and see. I can see it already, and I don't know whether this can, let's lift it out and lean it up so the two are next to each other. There, here we go then. So, how are we doing? So as you can see, that's the previous one, no blanking plates. And then we move over here, and it's a bit difficult to see really, but you can see there are 1, 2, 3 blanking plates at the top. And then similarly at the very bottom of the previous one, nothing at the bottom there. If I shuffle over here, you can see that there are 3 blanking plates at the bottom there. Now this is how the other one should have arrived. I think everything else about it actually looks okay. I'm just curious really to know whether anything else didn't go through the machine properly, but it seems, you know, okay. Otherwise there's the holes at the top there, and they look the same on the replacement. So yeah, it all looks the same. They haven't asked for this other one back, but I'm not really surprised because it's faulty, so what would they want to do with it? I don't know. But the important thing is now, after all this time, I can finally get the back on to the rack and really finish the project, which I started so many months ago. I'm not really cross with the company at all. I mean, I always think that how a company performs when something goes wrong is really crucial, and they've sorted the problem out, so I've got no complaints really. It's all gone swimmingly. Now they also included some extra screws in with the package as well, so bully for them. That's marvellous. So there we go. And before I take this all apart and put the back on, I want to sort of tidy things up a bit because the cabling inside, I just sort of threw it in there really. But I have altered a couple of other things. So if you've been watching the previous parts, there's just a very subtle difference. Let me open it up so you can have a proper look. Now, what I did was that unit at the very top there is the one that monitors my solar panels, and that was down here by NAS. But what I've done is to put an extra little box in here which you won't have seen before, and that you may recognise as a Mac Mini. Now that's a first generation Mac Mini. I've had that computer, I'm trying to think when I got it. I think from memory it was January 2005. It was when they very first came out, and I think that's when that was. So it's coming up for 13 years that I've had that particular piece of kit, and it runs quite an old version of OS 10. Let's not beat around the bush here. You fire it up and it's like looking back through the mists of time. However, the crucial thing is this slot at the front, which is, of course, a DVD reader. I don't think it's a writer. Is it a writer? Or is it just a reader? I'm not sure actually. It might be a burner. I'm not sure. But the crucial thing really, I don't really want to burn DVD, so I don't mind if it isn't. I can't remember. The crucial thing is that it reads DVDs, because very occasionally I need to read a disc. Not often these days, it has to be said, but occasionally I do need to read a disc. And my MacBook doesn't have a DVD drive. My Mac Pro doesn't have one either. I did buy a little USB one. If we just have a little look over here, I think... Oh no, it's not here. I put it in the pile of stuff to throw away. It was in my laptop bag. But because I took it out and it didn't work, so I've chucked it out. It was only a cheap thing off eBay, so that's not at all surprising really that it's kind of bust now. If you buy crap off eBay, then it's not going to last, is it? Let's be honest. If I bought a proper Apple one, then it probably would have lasted a lot longer, but I'd hardly ever need to use it, so a cheap one was fine. It did the job for me for a while. Anyway, I digress. The other day I got a new some sheet music for my saxophone. I play the alto sax, and very often that comes with a DVD with CD with the backing tracks in it. And I suddenly thought, how am I going to get these tracks onto iTunes so I can put them on my phone to use to play along to? And I realised I didn't have any devices with discs in that were attached to my computer network for me to be able to do it. And then I suddenly remembered I had George. Yes, my Mac Mini is called George. It's back in the days when I used to call my computer equipment after Blackadder characters. These days I use fictional detectives. For example, I'm digressing again, my switch here is called Wallander. So there we are. And the NAS there is called Sherlock. And the router there is called Watson. But anyway, this is George. And George has, of course, this drive-in. And what's good about that is that I can, of course, mount that any disc that's put into that DVD drive on any other Mac on the network. So I don't have to necessarily share the screen. I can just put the disc in there and then it'll just appear as a remote disc. Even though my computers are running an operating system that is about 7 or 8 versions after the one that's on here, it still all works rather nicely. So that's enough waffling for me. What I clearly need to do next is to put this left-hand piece of metal into position. But the real problem that I have is that with all this equipment in here, this is far too heavy to move. So I mean, the cabinet itself weighs 40 something kilos, and the UPS at the very bottom down here, that weighs 25 kilos, I think. So this is, and then that's not accounting all the other equipment that's in here as well. So this really isn't going anywhere. So I need to dismantle it, I need to take all the equipment out, and then I need to start putting it all back together, try and route the cables nicely. Right, as you can see, at update time, I have the cabinet pulled out, and I managed to move it without taking everything out. You can just see that the switch and the patch panel are still in there. And the reason is I managed to take out this heavy thing here, which is the UPS, all 25 kilos of it. I also took out my Synology NAS, not that heavy, but heavy enough. And with those two items out, I was able to move it forward. Now you can see here that from the back of the cabinet, I've also started to play around with the cables, which are a bit of a mess on the floor. Yeah, okay. And but I can see inside that's the back of George and the back of Watson, my router, and you can just see the back of the patch panel. The other thing I've done is to swap the PDUs around, so they're now facing out the back, which I think will be easy to get the back panel on. Doesn't necessarily make it easier to get to them when the cabinet's back against the wall, but there we go. Here you can see these are these Velcro cable ties that I've started to put into position to tidy my cables up. This is what I'm going to be using throughout the cabinet. So you can see I've just sort of started that side of things,
and I need to sort out some of the rest of these cables, but I will be using those cable ties just to tidy it all up. Right, a little bit later and more progress. There's all my new power units on the wall, and you can see here that I have pushed out one of the blanking plates, and I now have the back getting ready to go into position. Pushed some of the cables through, and there they are, sitting in the back of the cabinet, all nicely tied together. Still need to tie a few more of them up, but we're getting there now. It's starting to look better. Right, it's much later now. As you can see, I have the cabinet back in its correct position, and everything's back inside. The UPS is there at the bottom, and Sherlock, my NAS, is also back in position. And crucially, inside I have all the cables tidied up nicely. You can't really see that very well, it's too dark, and the reason it's dark is because the back is on the cabinet. Hurrah! The only thing I've got left to do is to tidy up perhaps those cables at the front into the patch panel, but yeah, you can't really see back here. It's yeah, you can't see. The other thing I've done is under the desk. I've tidied all the cables there. They're all underneath the desk, so you can't see them. So really, it's about as sort of cable free as it's likely to be, as it's likely to get. I'm really happy with how it's all looking now. And really, that's it. That's the sort of the job done. And I hope you've enjoyed watching me sort all of the cabinet out. Just tidy up these cables in the patch panel, as I was saying, and then, well, really, that's the job done. So let's shut the door on it, and oh yes, there we go. What do you think? There it all is. Oh yeah, I'm well chuffed with that. Really pleased. Okay, it's a little bit later now, and as I mentioned, I've sorted out the patch panel cables. I've used some shorter ones out of all those ones, if you remember, that I bought ages ago. So that's looking much neater now. So anyway, that's it. Thanks very much for watching these videos. There will be more as I adapt and increase the system and put other things in it. So please do stay tuned to the channel, and remember to subscribe, and there'll be some other videos coming up on screen any second now.